Have you ever found yourself repeating the same set of actions across different Zaps in Zapier? Well then, the Zap by Zapier was made for you. It allows you to take all these grouped actions, put them in a sub-Zap, and then all the other Zaps you have can request this sub-Zap to carry out those sets of actions. So to show you what I mean by this, we've got these different Zaps here, all these Ping sales member Zaps that listen to different Slack channels. And all of these Zaps request the Ping sales member sub-Zap. And this Ping sales member sub-Zap, once requested by all these different Zaps, it then carries out the same set of actions for each of those Zaps. And I'll go through these examples later on in this blog post, but already here we can see how this starts to save us time. Instead of taking all these actions from the sub-Zap and having them at the end of all these main Zaps, it saves us time because we don't have to put all of these actions here, here, and then after all the rest of these Ping sales member Zaps. We can just have them in one place here and then request all these actions to be carried out from these main Zaps. So it saves us time when building, but it also saves us time when maintaining our Zaps. Because imagine we needed to change this set of actions. If we didn't have a sub-Zap, we'd have to come into each of these main Zaps and change all the steps here in this main Zap and then all the other main Zaps. So we'd have to do it 5 times. We'd have to repeat those changes 5 times. Whereas with a sub-Zap, it's much easier for us to maintain. We can just make the changes in one place here in the sub-Zap, and then whenever any of these main Zaps request a sub-Zap, they will be carrying out the new actions we have specified in the sub-Zap. So now you can see how a sub-Zap can save you time when it comes to building Zaps and maintaining them. Let's take a look at an example of how we can put all these time savings into practice. So in this example here, we have notifications being sent to Slack from our marketing automation platform called Marketo, where one of our leads has taken a certain action. And here we can see that we've specified some lead owner names. And then what we would like to happen is that in the thread of this Slack message, we would like to tag the sales owner to let them know that the lead has carried out this activity. So here we can see that Aoife Duffy is mentioned as the lead owner. So in the Slack thread, we want to tag her to let her know that their lead has carried out this action. Okay, so let's take a look at how the sub-Zap is set up. And as a reminder, this sub-Zap is requested from these main Zaps, which I'll explain later on in this video. But for the moment, all you need to know is that these main Zaps listen to different Slack channels, and they will pass information from the new message in the Slack channel to this sub-Zap. So when we come into our sub-Zap, the first thing we do is select the Start a Sub-Zap event. And then in the trigger here, we specify all the input arguments that we need for our sub-Zap. If we put the keyword required after the name of the input argument, this means that the main Zap must specify that input argument in order for the sub-Zap to run. If the sub-Zap does not get a required input argument, then you will get an error and the sub-Zap will not run. So in this case, the sub-Zap needs the text that was in the Slack message, the thread ID, and the channel ID of this message from the main Zap. And then we've got a Google Sheet, which you can open up here. And this Google Sheet just contains a list of all our sales members along with their Slack tags, because since we want to tag these sales members in the thread, we need to know the mapping between their name and what their Slack tag is. And that is what this Google Sheet helps us with. And then in the backend tab here, we format all this information to make it easier to import to Zapier. So all we do here, I'll explain how we use this value in a second, but all we do here is we join all the first names, and then we join all the corresponding Slack tags. So we join all of these together using an asterisk, and then we join all of these together using an asterisk. And that's what these two values are. And then in our sub-zap, we're using the lookup spreadsheet row value. And then we're looking for the lookup value in the lookup column. So in the lookup column here, we're looking for this lookup value. And when we do this, it pulls in all our sales member names and all their Slack tags. So then we can use these in step number 3 here, which is a run Python action. This code might look scary, but the overarching goal is that this code parses the input Slack message to see if there are any owner names present in the Slack message. And if there are, find the corresponding Slack tags for those owners so that we can later on tag them in the thread of the original Slack message. So to do this, what it does is it pulls in the Slack message text, which we've gotten from this main zap. It's passed it to our sub zap. So then we can access this here in step number 3. And then we pull in all the first names of our salespeople and their corresponding tag names. And then what the first few steps here do is they just create parallel lists in Python. So you can imagine that we've just got 2 lists in our script. We've got a list for all the first names, and then we've got a corresponding list for all the Slack tags. And that's one-to-one mapping. So the first name at the first index here corresponds to the Slack tag at the first index here. It's a one-to-one mapping. And then what this step does is it just creates what's called a dictionary in Python. And all you need to know for this is that with this dictionary, if we specify the salesperson's first name, it will give us their corresponding Slack tag. So to give you an example here, if we said mapping and we pass the first name Eric, then this would return the Slack tag Eric. So that's what this dictionary does. And then we just use something called regex in Python to search the Slack message for all the account owner, account SDR, lead owner, or lead SDR names, and we store them in these variables here. And then we take all of these variables and we store them in another list in Python. And then we initialize a Slack message, which is currently empty. And then later on, if there are any owners present, we will add their Slack tag names to this message, because this message here is what will become the message we put in the thread to tag all the salespeople. So that's what this message is. And then what we do is after searching to see if there are any owner names present, we then loop through this list of owner names. And then basically, if the owner name is not empty and we find the owner name within the list of all our salespeople, then what we do is we add the @ tag and then the person's Slack name to the message, and then we continue going through the loop. So in the example where multiple salespeople are present, we'd come in first for, let's say, Alex. We'd find Alex's Slack tag, we'd add @Alex to the message, And then later on we see we've got a lead owner called Aoife. Then we'll come back through the for loop and we'll add the @ symbol and then the name Aoife. So then our eventual Slack message would be @Alex, @Aoife, and then this is what we would put in the thread of the Slack message. And finally, once we've looped through all the sales owner names and we've added all their Slack tags to the message, we return this message so that we can then use it within our main Zap. So you'll see here we return the message that we computed in step number 3 here. And in case you guys want to use any of this Python code in one of your own Zaps, I've included a link to this Python code here. So you can just open this up, go to GitHub, and then copy and paste all this code into your own Code by Zapier action. So if you need to parse out sales members in a similar scenario, you can do so. So now that we know what our sub-zap looks like, let's take a look at how the requesting zaps are set up. So we've got the requesting zap listening out to a particular Slack channel for a new message. And then we've got something called a Marketo bot filter. And the Marketo bot filter is something that just makes sure the username does not exist. And what this corresponds to, it means that the message was sent by a bot and not an actual user. Because in this case, as I mentioned, we want to filter for messages that are sent by our marketing automation platform. And the way we do that is by checking with this filter to make sure that the message was not sent by a human. And then in step number 3, we call the subzap. And as I mentioned, we have to specify the text of the Slack message that we got from Marketo here. And then this message gets passed to our subzap and it returns to us the message that we want to send in the Slack channel. So in step number 4 here, to scroll back up, we get the message back from our subzap, which contains all the sales members we want to tag. In step number 4, we make sure that there are actually sales members to tag and that the message isn't empty. And then we tag these sales owners in the thread of the original message. So you can see here, we take the message we get from our subzap, we put it in here as a text, and this will usually contain the sales members' Slack tag names like @Alex, @Aoife, and then we put in the thread ID to paste this message into the thread of the original Marketo message. So this is how you can use a subzap within Zapier and request it from one of your main zaps. But I also want to show you how we can do this a different way. And by doing this, I'll also show you an important lesson when it comes to subzaps. So I've mentioned this in the blog post here, but it's important to place filters after a return from subzap steps. You guys might be wondering, since we've got all these ping sales member main zaps, why don't we take these two actions here, the empty message filter and the tag owner in thread of original message, and put these in the subzap instead, because all 5 of these main zaps will need to carry out these exact same 2 tasks. So it makes sense to put them in the subzap. In this example here in the blog post, I don't do that, but this example in the blog post is good at showing you how you can take the information returned from a subzap and use it in the flow of your main zap. So it's good that I showed this example here in the blog post, but now I'll show you how we can take these 2 steps and then put them into the subzap itself. And I'll also talk about why the position of the filter is important. Okay, so let's take a look at our subzap. So what I've done is I've taken these 2 actions from the main zaps and I've put them into the subzap instead. And the order of where the filter comes is important. It must come after the return from subzap step. So say, for example, we had the filter and this Slack message before the return from a subzap. In the case that the message returned from step number 3 is empty, then the filter in step number 4 would stop the subzap from progressing to step number 5 and step number 6. So since the subzap never reaches the return from a subzap action, this will cause errors because it will mean that your main zaps will not be able to complete. So therefore, I always recommend, if you're using filters in subzaps, make sure that the filters are after the return from a subzap step, because once we've returned the information necessary to our main zap, then it doesn't matter if this filter stops the rest of the subzap from running, because we've already returned the necessary information to the main zap and the main zap can continue running. So this is an important learning point to take from this video. Make sure that if you're using filters in subzaps, make sure they are after the return from subzap action. And there you have it. That's a walkthrough of subzaps in Zapier. If you found this walkthrough helpful and you want to check out more Zapier related content, take a look at the Zapier section on my site, because I cover a lot of fundamentals in Zapier, like the subzap feature, but I also cover some more advanced use cases for Zapier. So whether you're just a beginner or you're a pro, I think you'd find all the posts I have here very helpful. And in the case that you're a Marketo user and you want to set up Slack notifications, like the one I've shown here, then you can take a look at the Marketo Slack integration post, which will show you how to do this. I hope you found this video useful today. If you did, please give it a like. And if you have any questions, please comment on the video.